All right, let's get started here. Hello, everyone. I am Margaret Scovern, and I am your host today for the webinar, Building Resilience, the New Strategic Imperative. I am with Pariveda Solutions, and I have been with Pariveda for about 11 years now. I started off delivering solutions for our clients. Then I moved into the role of leading the Seattle office, and I'm now in a national role. It was in Seattle where we developed the perspective you are going to see today, and it was with the team that has joined me, both Jeff and Toss. Jeff, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Dandy. I'm a principal out of our Seattle office with Pariveda. I've been with Pariveda about 4 years now, and dating back 20 plus years when I first started in consulting, I've been a technologist through and through. So excited to share our perspective and some real life implementations of what it means to be resilient.
Toss?
Hi, everybody. I am Toss. I'm also a principal in our Seattle office. Been with the firm about 6 years, over 20 years of experience in technology. I'm also very excited to share our resiliency platform, and as a recipient of that platform growing here at Pariveda as well. So very excited to share with all.
Thank you, Jeff and Toss. Let me tell you what we're going to do today. First, we are going to set some context. Why is resilience a strategic imperative? We are going to unveil the resiliency platform, so to describe to you what resiliency is. And we're going to be talking about, with the help of Jeff and Toss, the practical application of resiliency in your environment. We're going to leave some time at the end for Q&A. So get that chat open and be curious. List your questions. We'll be ready. So I do, before we start, want to describe Pariveda. Jeff, Toss, and I are all from Pariveda, and I'm not sure if you are all familiar with Pariveda. We are a technology strategy consulting company. We were formed in 2003 in Dallas and have grown to 11 locations across North America. In terms of our guiding principles, we hold relationships core to our principles. And that's not only relationships with our communities and clients, but also our employees. And you can see that in our numbers at Pariveda. We have a 92% repeat business and referral rate, and several consecutive years of winning Glassdoor's Best Places to Work. So we've introduced ourselves, we've introduced Pariveda. Let's get rolling on resilience. The reason why we believe resilience is a strategic imperative is because we absolutely believe that the behaviors, the activities, the decision-making of your company, of your employees that led to your success of today won't necessarily lead to your success in the future. Take a look at sustainability, for example. I remember, 15 years ago, I had my trash container. Then that morphed into another container called recycling. And then here in Seattle, we have another one for compost. That was our idea of sustainability. Not anymore. Sustainability is about carbon emissions. It's about calculating carbon emissions and making a pledge to carbon neutrality. Big companies are making these pledges to attain a zero carbon footprint. Sustainability is being disrupted. It is changing. You might also think about the time when you entered McDonald's and you're going to order your hamburger and there was a friendly face, or maybe at the Alaska ticket counter saying, "Hi, how can I help you?" Those days are gone. We are interacting with kiosks. Or in food, a high-tech vending machine. Services are being disrupted. I was talking to a colleague who was traveling pre-pandemic, and the airport he went to, actually, he interacted with a robot. So not a kiosk, but a robot. Every single industry is being disrupted. I feel like I need a thumbs up in the chat if you're feeling it. An emoji if you're seeing disruption in your industry. So your activities of the past won't necessarily lead to your future success. We feel that this disruption is being caused by three catalyzing forces: compression of change, of technology change, confluence of distinct disciplines, and then just complexity in the world in which we live and work. So let's talk about each one. Did you know that the telescope was invented in 1608? That was a technology disruption. The next one, the steam engine, came 196 years later. 196 years, that's plenty of time to understand the technology, innovate on the technology, integrate the technology. Now let's take a look at what was the next technology advancement, and that was the telegraph, 44 years later. The iPad to the Google driverless car, that's 8 years. I was reading an article the other day about AR, VR, and digital twins. Digital twins, I think, came on my radar last year. It brought up the term phygital. So we're going from digital twins now to phygital. That's the physical and the digital environment coming together. The point is, technology is changing rapidly. Our ability, it's being compressed, our ability to understand it, adapt to it, is being compressed. That is a catalyzing force that is affecting companies' ability to stay competitive. The second one I want to talk about is confluence. What's confluence? Confluence is the integration of two very distinct fields, disciplines, functions. As an example, let's talk about biology, physiology, and technology, distinct fields. Nowadays, through 3D printing, you can take cells and biomaterial and create biomedical parts. So most recently, these biomedical parts are being used to help repair joints and ligaments. That is the confluence of biology, physiology with technology, two distinct fields coming together. I don't want to focus just on technology with my examples. Another example of confluence is the manufacturing process. Typically, when we think of a manufacturing process, we think of it as rather linear, where we've got raw materials coming in, a product coming out of the end, and some waste happening along the way. Nowadays, that waste is becoming the raw material for another industry. I was reading about a brewery who was using grain, fresh grain, to create beer. And then that grain, the waste grain, became the raw material for a baker to bake a loaf of bread. Those systems are coming together, raw materials, waste. It is the intersection that's creating the confluence, disrupting our environment. So both of these, of course, are creating complexity. They are creating volatility in terms of what to do, how to make decisions. They're not the only ones. Think about cybercrime or the pandemic, natural disasters. All of these things are creating volatility. We are living in a very dynamic environment, in dynamic systems. And so it is not necessarily clear path forward. It's rather ambiguous. It's uncertain. So how do we make decisions in this very complex world? These are the three catalyzing forces that are affecting every industry. I want to talk to you about an answer. We believe that resiliency is the answer. And we define resiliency as always sensing, always learning, always adapting. Now, I don't want you to get hung up on the word always. That doesn't mean everywhere, all the time. What it means is a journey. This is a journey of sensing, learning, and adapting. So let's go through each one. Sensing. What is sensing? Sensing are those probes out in your environment. They are the discovery of what is happening, the current expectations of your customers, for example, the engagement of your employees. So probing, discovery, sensing what's going on in your ecosystem, including those forces like technology change. So what I see many times in companies in regards to sensing is that those sensors are applied in risk situations. So have we hit capacity? Is there a bottleneck? Very valid sensors to understand that something needs to be adapted. I want to bring up that there are also opportunity sensors. So let's say, for example, that the bulk of your business is coming from a certain demographic, 35 to 55-year-olds. And so, of course, you're sensing their expectations to understand how your products or services can be adapted to their changing expectations. There are also opportunity sensors. What's going on with other demographic groups based upon some of these forces, these external forces I talked about that might lead to a new business opportunity? So there are all sorts, the point is there's all sorts of sensors, both from a risk standpoint and an opportunity standpoint. All right, so now that we have this information, what do we do with it? Well, part of resiliency is learning. So it's being open to discover. It is being open to experiment with the information that is coming from these sensors. It is being willing to learn from others, rethink something that we have held on tight to over the years. It is through experimentation and an open mindset to remove our biases and learn, rethink, learn something new. That then leads us to action. And that action is adapting. It's channeling those learnings into reactive. And we talked about that in terms of we've hit capacity, and also proactive in terms of new opportunity, like the opportunity sensor I described. So always sensing, always learning, always adapting. And in this order, as humans, it really helps us remove the friction from adapting. So if we're getting the information and being able to sense what's going on, participating in the experiments, the adaptation isn't as difficult as times when we're not part of this resilient system. So always sensing, always learning, always adapting is our definition of resilience. We believe that it is with resiliency that you are able to combat these three catalyzing forces, that you are able to achieve a return on your technology investment, that you are going to increase your awareness with the confluence of distinct disciplines, that you are able to develop an aptitude to adapt. So you might be asking yourself, okay, great, but how do we do that? We do that through Pariveda's Resiliency Platform. The Resiliency Platform, it starts with purpose-driven, it's an infinity. There is no starting point, so let me change that. The Resiliency Platform is purpose-driven, technology-enabled, people-centric. Purpose-driven, so we're focused through the complexity. Technology-enabled, so we're tapping into the efficiency and effectiveness of technology. And of course, people-centric, because your organization is made of people. As you can see, this is an infinity. So the Pariveda Resiliency Platform is a journey. Before I get into the details of the platform, I want to talk about what it feels like to be a resilient organization. So as you're reading some of these snippets, I hope you can see yourself in terms of how resiliency is affecting you. Think about a resilient strategy or business execution where there are outside forces that could be affecting your business model. A resilient organization can answer those complex questions in terms of the stability and opportunity of your business model. A resilient organization can adapt to the changing marketplace, not only with your customers, but tapping into potentially new customers. There are a lot of companies going through digital transformations right now, and that is when they are taking technology and applying it to processes that exist in order to create a more efficient and automated process. I bet you in those cases, if you're part of one, you're being asked, hey, can you do this? And please don't disrupt the quality service that we're providing to our customers. No disruption in our business continuity. But you're being asked to fly the airplane while building the airplane. A resilient organization is one in which you can do that. And all is through empowering your employees to adapt to these new circumstances. So these are the outcomes of Pariveda's resiliency platform. It is what you should expect in working with this platform. So let's get into what it is in terms of the details. The resiliency platform is a set of product offerings to help our clients on this journey, as well as our approach. So I'll talk about some of the offerings and then get into the approach. We talked a little bit about your business model, something that Pariveda can do in order to help understand that market positioning is to do a market force analysis. What forces are impacting your business model today? It could be internal forces or external forces, as well as internal forces. We can take a look at your processes that enable your business and look at where are those pivot points for automation that are going to provide value to your organization. We're bringing in frameworks and processes to help identify those pivot points. In terms of technology, we provide a modern data enterprise where you can harness your data for insights, and we bring patterns and approaches to build modular applications that can adapt and change with technology change. We can take a look at your products and even investigate new products with a customer-centric jobs to be done that they're expecting. And we do all of this through developing resilient employees, your employees. How we go about that is, let's start at the bottom here. We bring those solution offerings that I just described. We engage with a resilient approach. What that means is we're partners with you. We're co-creating with your team. So the behaviors are being practiced and the learning is happening as we work with you. We come in purpose-led, so we're focused through the complexity on the engagement so that you are achieving that practical outcome as the project wraps up. And of course, we have to show up with a human-centric mindset. It's the people-first understanding to ensure that your employees are learning as we go. The Resiliency Platform is a set of offerings and an approach where your business outcome is achieved. Your employees have those practiced behaviors and have shifted their mindset towards resiliency so that you can address that next objective without us. That's resiliency. I'm gonna stop sharing now, and I'm going to bring in our panelists, Jeff and Toss, so that we can ask them questions about resiliency. Practically speaking, how does this show up in working with your clients? So Toss, I'm going to start with you. And can you describe how you have approached resiliency with your clients?
Yeah, talk about a recent opportunity that I had to lead a small team of FTEs and contractors. And this team was tasked with data movement or ETL. Very talented individuals who were very good at their jobs and experts in a specific tool that's called Informatica. They weren't exposed to all of the goals of the program and the company. And what I found is they were left sometimes waiting for the next thing to work on. So trying to embrace my inner child and going with the old quote of knowing is half the battle, we started by empowering the team with what are the goals? What are we trying to do? It's not a task. These are all things that are part of a larger picture of a larger system. And over time, what I realized is that the team began to move from just doing tasks to recommending other tasks to make our products better, to make the company better, and expanding their skill sets. So again, moving away from simply being experts in the tool to being enablers of data. I was very proud to see that team grow.
Thanks, Toss. I can see how the purpose-driven approach and then abstracting the work from task-based and expert to a more broad problem-solving mindset probably helped in terms of their overall pride in their work too.
Definitely.
Thank you. Jeff, do you want to describe how you've approached your clients with resiliency?
Absolutely. So one of the clients that I was working with was being affected by change in technology, just as you depicted, where new physical and virtual components that were core to their consumer offerings were evolving rapidly.
So what you're saying is there was that compression, there was technology change happening that they had to react to.
That's right, external to them. And as they were looking at sort of their engineering problem space, they thought it was scale, right? So having to scale the application in order to support more people and those people doing different things with the new technology components. So in other words, going from point A to point B. And as we engaged with them, we realized it's a bit of a limiting perspective because we knew that the technology was going to change again, needing them to go from then point B to C and so on. So when we engaged, what we did is we looked holistically at their problem statement and really started to embed, look for opportunities to embed more resiliency into their model. So what do I mean by that? First, we started to map out their processes and really through deep interviews, workshops, both with SMEs in the area as well as with the end user community, to start to identify pain points, but more importantly, these areas of divergence in their process, whether it's geographically based or because of different technologies, so that we could get an understanding to try to start unifying that vision and working them towards a process that is more resilient. After that,
before you go on, so it sounds like, based upon what you said, there was absolutely learning in terms of the approach, and learning not only in how to do it, but learning how important those sensors were.
That's absolutely right. And I'm proud to say
if I could put words in your mouth.
Absolutely. And I'm proud that, both sides, we all learned, right? As it is a continual journey. So then we started to look at the application needs and how that needed to evolve to be more flexible, more adaptable to the business process that was evolving and changing, as well as the technology that's been changing. And as that architecture started to evolve, it started to really generate and capture a significant amount of data for the entity that we were working with. And then that data started to generate a new business opportunity where they could leverage that across their organization, across their division, and then across the organization, and actually starting to break down silos. And then as those silos started to break down, then we started to see the process needing to evolve. And you can start to feel a little bit of the infinity that you described so well. And then lastly,
hey, I'm gonna ask another question there.
Yeah.
So how did they realize that that's data that was being accumulated as really an adjunct or just an output of the process that was going to provide some longer term value for them?
I think, part of it is just once you start seeing it and you get more data, you can start to figure out what information that's actually deriving. And so that was happening with the core SMEs that we were working with. And then it started extending to end users when they started to see, elements of data within the application. They were starting to request and do, more user requests to our team for this report or that, slice of data. And then that kind of sensor started feeding back into the product backlog. And, that'd be great if we can extend and create, self-service activities for those users. So that's kind of how it started to unfold.
Right. I can really see how you're describing that infinity of how you're helping here, which then impacts and affects another area of the resiliency platform.
Yeah. And I will hit, because we didn't talk about the people in the center. When we were doing this, we were doing it with our client, right? It's not to them. So we were, as we brought in frameworks such as, user-centered design or journey mapping, or whatever the techniques were, we were coaching them through it. They were side by side as we started having deeper conversations across the organization. And then what that turned into, which is pretty amazing, is this once series of spreadsheets that became siloed products is now this sort of living ecosystem that continually evolves and further enabling our client to make multi-million-dollar decisions that's core to driving their business. So it's pretty exciting.
It does sound exciting. Thank you, both Jeff and Toss, for that. So we talked about the resiliency platform being an infinity. And so I could imagine that some of our listeners are wondering, all right, so where do I jump in? Where do I start with this? Jeff, do you want to start? And then Toss, I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, happy to. So I guess I'll start by restating, you said this earlier too, but it is important to recognize it is a journey. And because of that, there's no destination per se, right? It's a shift in behaviors and how you operate to really embed that resiliency in everything you do. But that being said, there probably is an area instinctually to you where you know where there's pain points, right? Whether it's this application or technology is just very inflexible and it just can't adapt, or the business process is like my example earlier is too divergent, and there's no way to manage the nuances across all the different divisions within the organization. So there's probably a pain point that, and maybe one of those resonated with y'all, but there's probably a pain point you're aware of. So I'd definitely start there. And then as you start to kind of unravel what's blocking the resiliency in that area, then you can start to leverage and think about the infinity that was laid out, and apply a critical lens to other areas of the organization as you begin the journey. And then just like, any good organizational change, really developing a good change management, or better put, change enablement approach, guiding principles, defining the boundaries, and then through that, you can start to identify the sensors that you need within the organization as you start the journey.
Yeah, I would say in terms of the resiliency platform, that change enablement with Pariveda looks and feels a lot different than typical change enablement. As I mentioned earlier, change is hard. It creates an uncomfortableness, and sometimes it really is tied to us in terms of our identity. So that makes it really, really hard to separate. And as we defined, the process of sensing, learning, and adapting, when we're bringing that as part of our engagements, and as you said, working with our client, the change enablement is happening because of those behaviors that we're embedding in what we do. Not saying that's all, but it sure makes the change less cumbersome.
Yep. Yeah.
Toss, where have you started with your clients, and give us some of your practical examples.
Yeah, I'll echo the journey portion. It's not going to happen overnight. So if it seems big, it probably is. So I think allow yourself that grace that it's something that's going to take time. My background is technology, and I think we tend to focus on improving technology because it changes so frequently, and that we think it's the panacea, right? So that new tool is going to fix my problem. And in our framework, we do talk about many facets, 3 of which are technology, people, and process. And what I like to do is try to start with the area that we're not really strong in, because we're going to lean into those areas of strength, in my case, technology. And so I try to focus on people and process in order to first understand, not only is the tool the right tool, but are we using it right? As a golfer, and if there are any golfers out there, I'm sure we've all bought new clubs every year thinking that that's going to solve my hook. Well, it's not. It's my swing. I'm not using it right. And so again, trying to look into those areas to help improve.
That is a great analogy. If my tennis racket could only be gigantic to get that ball across the net. We do have more questions, but I would like to open it up to the folks who have joined us here to see if we can find out what's on your mind based upon what we have presented. Okay, this is a question for Toss. Did you have to, let's see. Okay, did you have to explicitly say to your customer resiliency, Or how did they know their way of working had to be different?
I actually did use the term resilience, but it was in the context, again, of people. When I met with the team, the idea was the things that we're doing now won't need to be done forever. When you're moving data from one old location to a new location, in some future, that old location goes away. But the company should benefit and want to retain that knowledge. And so how do we make the individual resilient so that they're able to continue to create value for the company in different ways? So while adapting their way of working was a way of changing their thinking, the idea of making them resilient was a very direct message that I used with the team.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that we talk a lot in terms of the teams I lead about resiliency. How are we helping? Actually, every week, our account team gets together and we go through a little forum on how have you helped our client become more resilient. So and we look at it from a process, technology, and just overall adapting lens. So it doesn't just happen, as we've reiterated over and over again, but understanding in the context of the work that we're doing, how can we create a sensor, help understand where a sensor might be needed, help create an experiment, or provide a framework that is going to provide more resiliency in the problem solving or thinking. So it's definitely top of mind as we're working with our clients, and it's discussed every week. Jeff, did you want to add anything else?
You both kind of hit on it. As I was thinking about the question, we didn't necessarily lead with the word resiliency, but what emanated through was really being comfortable with discovery. We wanted to, and you hit on that earlier as well, Margaret, but really focus on discovery and the empathy and to understand. And it was all couched with always trying to learn, so that always learning really resonated when we engaged. And through that, we created new sensors because we were learning different things. But we kind of anchored back to the really getting a good handle on discovery and learning was kind of core.
Thank you. All right, so the next question we've talked about, this team here has talked about. So Toss, I'm going to throw this one at you again. How did you start changing the mindset of your people as you go through something like this, like a digital transformation?
I think I appealed to maybe their sense of self-value, maybe is the term. So we all want to be known for something. We all want to be able to think that believe that the things that we're doing are making a difference. And if we're not constantly learning and constantly growing, some of those skills become less valuable, right? I mean, there's a lot of work that can be moved offshore sometimes, and that's not a skill we would want our employees necessarily to be experts in, because we can move that elsewhere. So the constantly growing, the constantly learning is to make sure that our people are armed with the latest and greatest tools, if you will, but learning that the tools will change. So I need to learn a new tool, and building that behavior. So trying to appeal to that desire to continuously add value and continually be known as a person that is helping the firm grow.
Thanks. Jeff, I saw you shaking your head. Are you good, or do you want to add something?
No, that's well, I feel like I should add, yeah, because I was thinking through it as well. But I guess the thing that resonated with me was a conversation I had with a client previously of, we were talking through the product that was being built, and the question came up. They're like, when will this be done? When will we be done kind of building this product? And I thought that was interesting because to kind of go back to the original messaging from a technology side, because it's continually evolving. If the product is serving its purpose and continues to serve its purpose, that the forces around it are going to force you to continue to adapt and change the product regardless. And so the product being done, I don't know if there ever will be a time when it's done until it's lived its useful life. I don't know. It reminded me of that story.
Yeah, useful life towards its purpose.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing in regards to technology investments and new product development, is really understanding and doing those checkpoints in terms of purpose. Sometimes because of forces, that's changed. What's needed to be done. And we keep on moving towards, we spent a lot of money on this application, and so we're just going to add on to it, even though the reason for using it has changed. And there definitely need to be checkpoints in terms of, it might be time to scrap and start something new, maybe something much smaller based upon the changing environment.
Yeah, and one practical application of that we've done in our teams is every time we talk about one of the products or a part of the ecosystem that the team is working on, the vision and the value of that product is almost always part of the conversation, to make sure that what we're doing is still, for the vision of the product or that business process or that value. So it's a way to kind of quickly re-anchor. Yes, we're talking, this is for the vision, and then maybe that, leads to some changes or different technology decisions, but it's anchoring back to that purpose. You're right.
So for the person who asked the question around how do you start changing the mindset of your people as you go through something like a digital transformation, I hope we provided enough meat there to answer that question. If not, just post another question. I am going to ask this question because I thought about this myself, and then I'll go back to some of the others. Resiliency seemed to be a word that was used a lot in 2020. How is this different? Oh my gosh, isn't that the case? Number one, we developed this perspective pre-pandemic, and then resiliency and the word, it's in everyone's vernacular. I mean, it's being used all the time. So I spent a lot of time on our definition of resiliency. So I think that in and of itself is what is different about the way that Pariveda defines it. But here, to be more specific, let me tell you what I've read in regards to resiliency. The way that others are approaching it is definitely pandemic induced, and it is risk-based. So reaction, it's reacting to an external force like a pandemic. And I hear words in terms of shoring up And when I read that, I think of a column, a concrete column of resilience, of armor. That's not going to work. Bulldozer comes up by and that column gets demolished. Resilience isn't about steadfastness. And so that's one thing that I've seen that is notably different with Pariveda's definition of resilience. The other that I've seen is, and here's your checklist item of how you are going, or how we're recommending you can react again to the pandemic. And it's a 5-step checklist. This isn't a 5-step checklist. This is a journey. And having a company come in and say, okay, we're going to go from point A on the checklist to point B on the checklist. What does that leave you with? That leaves you at point B. And it's not going to necessarily equip you to get to point C and D. So I would say the core difference in terms of Pariveda's definition of resiliency is the fact that it's in motion. It in and of itself, it's adapting, and it's not risk-based. It is not a reaction. It will help absolutely to react to the forces. It also has a view for opportunity and innovation and proactiveness. So that's what I would say is the difference. All right, let's go to another question. I love this concept, but how do I tell my peers, VP, and colleagues on how to approach this on a tangible level? Anyone want to volunteer? I can start. So that does kind of tie with one of the questions I asked, which was, where's the starting point? So I want to make sure I'm answering the question. So what do you tell your colleagues? So you pick that intuitive pain point that you have. So it might be, I'll use Toss's example. It might be that we are trying to become more data focused, data product focused company. We can monetize our data. Our pain is getting access to it. So what do you tell your colleagues? I would say, you would say, I have a different approach of moving us from where we are today to where we want to go. That is going to help us through a long-term evolution. And it employs a people-centric approach, frameworks and patterns that will help us on our journey. And there was another question about markers and how do we know whether we're making progress. With markers and systems in place to understand how we're moving along this journey. That's what I would say. And those markers and trackers are just regular things, like how this is about people. So again, in Toss's example, how engaged are you in terms of this project. Doing that could be a sensor in terms of tracking our progress. How do you feel empowered to experiment or make decisions based upon the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish? So those would be other trackers that to put in place besides the regular, project management trackers that all consultancies know how to do.
Margaret,
Yeah, go ahead.
We're down the last few minutes. You asked me to give you a checkpoint. So, but one thing I'd like to add is, to that question is the word tangible is really what sticks out to me. And I think it's important to align first, not on what we're going to do, but again, why we're doing it, because the what's going to change, and it should change. It's part of that infinity. So, and it's not a direct answer to the question, because I think the challenge is making sure the executives and the peer leadership team is clear on why we need to do this. Once you're there and you define your why, I think those whats will end up falling in line pretty quickly. And again, putting together that behavior of experimentation and growth mindset will let you know that, oh, that didn't work. Let's try something else, because it's not about the what, it's about the why.
Thanks, Toss, both for the time check and the additional color to the question. All right, I am going to share my screen again here. We want to thank you for joining us today. And we also want to invite you to continue this conversation. We are going to be holding a forum in July, and this will be anyone who wants to continue this conversation about resiliency, talk about the challenges that are facing you today, and meet with us and other folks who are going through the same type of challenges to help each other build resiliency, because it is absolutely imperative in order to address the disruption that is affecting all of us. We will provide this link in LinkedIn and through emails, and we are looking forward to talking to you again about resiliency. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.